Welcome to episode 172 of the Grip Strip Podcast, the pole position edition of the Grip Strip Podcast. My name is Philip Matthew. I'm your host, and I'm here with my co-host, the iRacing Indy 500 champion, a computer genius, a gentleman, and a scholar, and one of the biggest members of Duval County. His name is Josh Fine. What's going on, brother?
Hey, I'm doing great, and that's right. I'm one of the biggest members of Duval County, but yeah, it's been a good weekend, of course, and we had a lot of good racing, of course, throughout the weekend in IndyCar, NASCAR, maybe a F1, if you consider that to be good. But yeah, definitely a lot of stuff that happened, and yeah, ready to get into it.
Yeah, this week is jam-packed with what took place and not as much what is taking place, but there is a major that we'll get into. We'll talk about Alex Palou's victory at the Detroit Grand Prix in IndyCar and adding to his points lead after a battle with the defending series champion Will Power. At Cup, of course, Kyle Busch from pole gets his third win of 2023. While his teammate sucks and is blaming Austin Cindric for turning him in the wall when, frankly, Austin Dillon went and turned himself across Austin Cindric's nose. We'll get into all that. There was a bit of argy-bargy going on there. In the truck race, Grant Enfinger won and then broke the news that him and his wife are expecting their second child, so congrats on that as well. In the XFinity race, Justin Allgaier dominated, but got cleaned out by Parker Kligerman, and the beneficiary was Cole Custer, bringing good news to Stewart-Haas Racing since they really haven't had much in recent days. After the show last week was the massive penalty announcement. We'll get into that during the Cup Series review. We'll also talk about the Fish Lips winning again, and Mercedes actually looking like they might be in the first steps of coming back, which might make it somewhat relevant later in the year to watch Formula One because it isn't watchable now. We'll go through the roundup, F2 and F3. We're also at Barcelona. The New England Nationals finished earlier today. This is Monday, so they had rain out. They ran it today, so we'll go and give you results on that. And they're going to be racing at Bristol this coming weekend. WRC was in Italy, so we'll give you the recap and the results. World Superbikes in Misano. Formula E had a doubleheader at Jakarta. Indy NXT at Detroit. There was a lot of action in the preliminary events for sure at Detroit on this new configuration. This coming weekend, we'll have MotoGP and Moto2 at Mugello and the 24 Hours of Le Mans, which they've already started practice and testing, and the Garage 56 car has been quite a revelation there so far in early practice with the times that they're putting up there. Speaking of Gen 7 cars, the Cup Series, along with, for the first time ever, the XFinity Series will be racing at Snoreoma for this weekend doubleheader, and we'll preview and make picks for both of those races. Josh will let us know all things going on in the world of sim racing in the sim segment, and we'll close the deal and give a sneak peek to a guest that we're going to have next week. So look forward to that for all you who are avid listeners of the GSP. But we will first start with the Detroit Grand Prix. The race was, they had a caution on the first lap in the first turn. Callum Ilott climbed over the back of Kyle Kirkwood to start the race. It was a really rough circuit. It was a tough race for everybody, but in the end, Alex Palou was on a different level this weekend, and he was able to hold off after a spirited battle with Will Power, who used pit strategy to get himself up in position to lead, go in battle. So the last two champions of the IndyCar series battling for the win. The Chevy Detroit Grand Prix won by Alex Palou for Ganassi and Honda over Will Power, Felix Rosenqvist, Scott Dixon, Alexander Rossi. So 3 Chevys in the top 5, 2 McLarens. The one McLaren that's missing, we'll have to talk about him here shortly. Kyle Kirkwood, as I mentioned, got run over by Callum Ilott on lap 1 and recovered to finish 6th, which is pretty epic. Scott McLaughlin, Marcus Armstrong, so 3 Kiwis in the top 8. Marcus Ericsson and Indy 500 champion Joseph Newgarden rounded out the top 10. But I mean, yeah, that was a big incident, that first lap incident. Pato O'Ward did have pace, but in the end, there was a mistake on pit road with leaving a tire loose. He thought he had a broken drive shaft. They put the tire back on, and then he crashed, which is, you just can't give away that many points. The last 2 races, the amount of points he's given away, if he loses the championship, which right now he's 82 points out of the lead, he's given away probably a good 60 points, I would say, or at least 60 points, because he would have probably finished in the top 5 in both of these races, both Indy and Detroit. But unfortunately, that's not what happened for him, the one McLaren car that didn't finish. But all I got to say, Josh, is, man, hello, Palou, because the 21 champion looks like he's back on that same trend as he was a couple of years ago. He's just in a different time zone at the moment. He, of course, set the record at Indy for the fastest 1 and 4 lap average. He fell short because of Rinus VeeKay at Indianapolis, but had one of the fastest cars. Comes back this weekend at Detroit, gets a second win of the year, or first, I think. Or wait a minute, mixed whether I think he won.
He won at the Indy GP.
Indy GP, yeah. So second win in the last 3 races. So there you go. What did you think of all the events at Detroit? It was quite an interesting course. Very rough, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, Alex Palou dominating this event and winning the pole here. I mean, if Indianapolis had gone better for him and he didn't have that incident on pit road with Rinus VeeKay last week at the 500, we could easily be talking about him being on a hot streak right now. I mean, I think he still is, but we could be talking about him, winning 3 races in a row, including the Indy 500, being the points leader, being the all-out favorite to win the title. But right now he's really fast and definitely, dominated the weekend. Made the best of the very rough track on the Detroit Grand Prix, and it was definitely he was one of the drivers that had some very cryptic comments on Twitter regarding the quality of the surface, and he was one of the guys that was very kind of complaining about that, but managed to get it done. But it wasn't without challenge though from Will Power, of course. The first stint during the race that went under green. Will Power caught up to Palou and managed to overtake him right around the time that Palou took his first stop of the race. And I think, maybe if Will Power had just a little bit more time, he could have gotten around Alex Palou. And there was, definitely a couple of times there where, Will, he led 9 laps as well. So, of course, him and Palou were, I think, the 2 best cars in the field, and tire strategy for Will Power was a little bit different, and that's what allowed him to gain so much time, compared to the rest of the field on Palou. And what an amazing drive! But had one shot to win at the end, of course, and made he made Alex Palou overdrive the 3rd turn after the long straight, but Palou was able to get back in the gas and make the corner, and Will Power tried to cross under him, but then Scott Dixon was there and ran into his path, and then kind of went on 2 wheels for a second, and then the power shut off briefly for Power. So could have been interesting there if Power was able to make that pass cleanly, but still Palou was able to defend pretty well throughout that sequence and didn't really have any other challenge from that. And by the time Power was able to get back into second, it was basically Palou's race the rest of the way. So yeah, it was definitely a very interesting Grand Prix. Obviously past Detroit Grand Prix haven't been all that entertaining for the most part, but this one was definitely a little bit different. Definitely The strategy, I think, between Power and Palou definitely was very interesting. And seeing how Power is able to close the end of tire run, and then Palou, just the sheer pace that he's been on, him being able to establish that was pretty interesting as well. But then, also late in the race, with not only the drama between Power and Dixon, you had the McLaren guys, Rosenquist and Rossi getting into it as well. So that was pretty entertaining. And, of course, lots of action happening behind the pack. Kirkwood having an opportunity to possibly finish higher, out of that sequence, but ends up in sixth. So definitely a lot of things happening towards the end of the race. With this new layout here. But one thing we talk about with Palou, compared to like Colton Herta and Pato O'Ward, who are both, I mean, all three of those guys have been in the conversation for possibly going over to Formula One in some shape or form. Obviously, Herta's been the guy who's had maybe the longest rumors, of course, in terms of how long that they've been talking about him being able to be the most talented going to Formula One. Pato, last couple of years with the McLaren Association, and then of course also with Palou, his association with McLaren, potentially going over there and being in a Formula One capacity. Obviously, he's there as a test capacity as well, and was at the Miami Grand Prix last month in May. But Palou is the guy, I think, out of those three guys that I could easily see who's ready to go to Formula One. I think he's the complete package, in terms of being not only a fast driver, but someone who takes care of his equipment and drives, has good racecraft. I think Colton obviously has great talent. We've seen it, but we've just never been able to see him capitalize on that and improve outside of his pace. And then Pato has the personality, he has the fanfare, and he's also quick as well. But we've seen him make a lot of dumb mistakes, especially recently. And he's been in the talk, for some of the wrong reasons. Go back to his incident with Scott Dixon back at Long Beach, Indy 500, the late errant move. And even this race here, Detroit Grand Prix, you could say maybe he was really trying to overcompensate for the mistake that they made on pit road and ended up, wrecking out of it. So, which may be a result of just pushing too hard, trying to make up for all that lost time, lost laps. So, yeah, I think Palou's definitely, like, if he ends up being in Formula One, or it's next year or maybe in a few years now, I think he's the guy that's most prepared and ready to go. And this run that he's been on right now this season, I think has definitely shown that to be the case.
Yeah, plenty of great points there, and I do agree with your assessment about how Palou is way more. I think he's way more measured and more polished compared to the two big names that came from Indy NXT and have been rivals in Herta and O'Ward. I mean, Herta and O'Ward have fan bases, whatever. I mean, I'm obviously a fan of Pato O'Ward, but his last 2 weeks, the mistakes that he's made or forced upon himself, whatever, you can't win championships that way. I mean, and Colton, they'll just say it's because he's at Andretti Autosport, but I mean, he has raw talent. He has raw talent and the ability, but you have to be able to put it together regularly and run top 5, top 10. I mean, period. Like every week. Like you can't have days where you disappear and then win a race. I mean, the way the points structure is in IndyCar, you need to be running in the top 5, top 6 every single week to go and win a championship. It's the Scott Dixon method of winning championships. That's why he has 6 of them. And Alex Palou, I think we've talked about it here on this show ever since Palou moved over there, that I think he's been the best teammate Scott Dixon has had since Dario Franchitti by far, because he's got pace, he drives hard, he is very focused and motivated and calculated, and he comes from, Super Formula, which is a very difficult category, and being a non-Japanese driver and driving in Super Formula and being able to be successful is a big deal. And he was there, did well, That's before, and then he came over here, ran for Coin before he's worked here with Ganassi. And I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with his contract, if it's still a done deal that he's going to McLaren. Seems like it is. Maybe why Felix Rosenqvist is driving harder than he has ever in his IndyCar career. But for now, Ganassi's benefiting from having Alex Palou and the way things are going. When you have a near 70, he has a 70-point lead on Joseph Newgarden and a 51-point lead on Marcus Ericsson, leading into Road America here in a couple weeks' time. Road America, which is another track that he's been good at in his career. So this could get out of hand real quick if these guys don't answer here in the next few weeks. He's not as great at Iowa on the short oval and Gateway, but there's plenty of road courses between now and the vast majority of the races the rest of the year are permanent road courses. So that's a problem for everybody else, I would say. He's won on the permanent, he's won on a street circuit, and he's got a lot of momentum. So something that we're going to have to look at as we go on. So I would say the key play, well, that's the thing, key player was the track itself, and the unforced errors people were making because they're on cold tires, how narrow some sections were wider, and then they narrow up, and then you put it in the fence. There's the first caution there, and then Stingray Rob had a pretty brutal day, went off a bunch of times, and then Grosjean crashed late in the race, and then so did David Malukas. Grosjean crashed out of likely top 5 or top 10 result, which, I mean, it's Romain Grosjean. It's not really that shocking, I guess, but it's kind of part of the problem for Andretti Autosport. When you have your fastest guy is inconsistent like Colton Herta, and then Romain Grosjean is liable to hit the wall every race, even though he's got speed and pace. And then Kyle Kirkwood got screwed over at the start of the race and somehow or another got a 6th place finish out of it. And then, well, we don't count the other guy because DeFrancesco's a waste. We'll get to Road America here in a couple weeks' time and see what these guys bring to the table in the IndyCar circuit here. I mentioned the points. Palou leads the points over Ericsson, Newgarden, Scott Dixon, and Pato O'Ward are your top 5. Alexander Rossi, Scott McLaughlin, Will Power, Colton Herta, and Felix Rosenqvist round out the top 10. Herta to Christian Lundgaard, who's in 13th, is 13 points, so that's pretty close. Then there's a Rossi, McLaughlin, and Power only separated by 4 points. O'Ward, Dixon, and Newgarden is 12 points. So there are good battles amongst these guys in the points, but you're gonna have to start making some moves here. Road America, then they have Mid-Ohio, Toronto, and the 2 races at Iowa. Then they'll run Nashville, and then the second Grand Prix, the Indy GP with the NASCAR weekend, Gateway, Portland, and Laguna to end the season. So it's going to start coming hot, and every couple of weeks you're going to have a race. So IndyCar season's going to go and finish real quick, right? It'll come out of nowhere, but it'll finish quick. Got to keep up with that for sure. All right, let's move on to the NASCAR Cup Series. Had an hour and a half delay early in the race because they take forever to go and start races in NASCAR because of Fox and whatever. So they had an hour and a half lightning delay for the Enjoy Illinois 300, which left things, they're held off and you had to wait. But one thing was for certain, Kyle Busch didn't care about waiting. He had a great race car, and from pole ended up getting his 3rd win of 2023 and locks himself. If anyone was really worried that Kyle Busch wasn't going to be a factor in the playoffs, I mean, it matches, and it has a lot of similarities to his 2008 season when he went to Gibbs with the wins that he's had. And I forget where I read it on Twitter. I think it was like a rough surface track that he wins his first race, which was Atlanta in 08 and California this year. He won at Talladega, both in 08 and this year. And now wins his third race in a short amount of time, and it's at Gateway. So Chevrolet has been dominant most of this season, and it shows because the top three guys in wins are all Chevy drivers. 8 wins for Byron, Busch, and Larson. So that's and now Kyle Busch puts himself in the mix points wise a little bit to have a chance, because he's only, what is it, about 30 points out, 31 points behind William Byron, so he could go for that regular season title for if it keeps on moving that way. There wasn't a whole hell of a lot of passing. There was only 10 lead changes among 5 drivers. Reddick had issues all through the day, got spun out early, and then before the lightning delay, then wrecked later. The race was essentially Kyle Busch, Ryan Blaney, and William Byron. Those are the 3 cars that were up there most of the day. And you can look at it in the stage points also. The vast majority of the stage points, all those cars were in the top 10 most of the day. Kyle Busch with the victory, number 63 of his Cup career. Denny Hamlin, Joey Logano, the defending race winner. Larson from 22nd to 4th. Martin Truex, Ryan Blaney, Daniel Suarez, William Byron, Michael McDowell from 21st to 9th, and Kevin Harvick rounding out the top 10. Other stage points, Chastain got stage points, but ended up, I don't know why it says he has 0 points. But I think that has to be a typo, unless he got penalized for something that I don't know about. That has to be a typo, because he's running for Cup points. And then, yeah, Cindric got some points, stage points, and so did Richard, but had an accident, brake failure. That was one thing that seemed to be a problem yesterday. A lot of brake failures. I mean, yes, they're shifting a lot more there. There's hard braking. You're going fast. It's going fast into these corners and then shifting down 2 gears and having to roll, get the car down into kind of like a bowl. It's got Dover characteristics to it. It's got Martinsville characteristics to it. It's an interesting track, Gateway. But Kyle Busch last year had a chance to win, lost out to Joey Logano. This year he got redemption, and I mean, he's relaxed. He's feeling good about his situation. That it was an hour and 45 minutes. My fault. It was like, that was an hour and a half. It's an hour and 45 minutes. Made me waste a lot more money on beer. But Kyle Busch goes out there and gets that victory, Josh. And I guess right now he's free rolling. He's trying to go and get the regular season championship now. Him and Randall Burnett and company. I think they're getting if they get on a roll here during this summer, it's around the time when Tyler Reddick ended up starting to win his races, and they got on a heater during this time of the year last year. So if that goes the same way with Kyle Busch, look out.
Yeah, definitely look out here. And you talk about comparing Kyle Busch's 2023 to 15 years ago when he was in the number 18 for Joe Gibbs. I mean, I think that year he led the points for the most part, for all the way through the start of the regular season and everything. This next gen era is definitely a lot more parity. It's not as much as last year, but it's still quite a bit of inconsistency. But Kyle Busch has a chance, like you said, he's only 44 points out to possibly get the regular season title. So there's definitely an opportunity there. He's going to have a really good summer, and there's a lot of road courses upcoming, which, last year the number 8 car was really good on the road courses, and, Kyle Busch is also, a fairly good road racer. So there's definitely an opportunity for him to get that regular season title with all those opportunities available to him. And there's plenty of good tracks for him over the summer as well. So it could be the summer of Summer of Kyle here coming up real soon in the Cup Series. But yeah, I mean, this race here, I mean, to me, it looked like I was watching the Indy cars at Gateway, except with stock car bodies. And it's getting very similar, of course, because now toe link is now a word that we're now using in the Cup Series, which seems strange when you think about how it's always been solid rear axle, racing since the beginning, and now we've been using the word toe link as course forever in open wheel racing. So it's just like open wheel racing with a stock car body, I guess, or sports car body. So there's things to think about there, but the racing itself kind of resembled IndyCar racing at Gateway, which isn't bad, but considering stock car racing, you're supposed to be able to pass more. Definitely looked a lot like that, but it's a lot of factors that go into it. The levels of power and the tire, which I think was the same that they've been using at most of the short tracks this year. So we'll see if they're able to make that different or not later in the year for more of the short tracks. But yeah, it's definitely that, and of course the way that the heat cycle worked in the brake for the braking here is kind of what caused the issues that we saw on Sunday, which I think is concerning. But it seems like maybe Gateway is the only track where we really saw any of that happen with braking issues and brake rotors exploding, etc. So still, I think something worth investigating. The fact that it happened to several cars of differing levels. You had the 2311 cars who right there with at the top tier. If they're not top tier, they're like very, very much on the doorstep of being top tier. You had the Legacy Motor Club experience that, bottom tier team. You had Spire car experience that as well, which maybe mid to low tier. So, yeah, definitely a problem across, levels of the series. So, well, hopefully NASCAR resolves that issue soon. And everything, and it's kind of interesting seeing that happen, but also definitely not good. And there are even reports of a few fans that got struck by some of the shrapnel. Of course, shout out to Noah Gregson. Of course, he was able to reach out to one of the fans and offered something in return. Because he got struck by one of the shrapnel from his car. So good fan interaction there from Noah, and that's why honestly, a lot of fans like him because he does things like that, of course. But yeah, things definitely don't want to see that happen. So hopefully they get it resolved soon. But yeah, I mean, the racing wasn't all that interesting for the most part, and really is hard to get any passing done. If you got on the inside, it's hard to because you really need that drive off on the outside. To be able to maintain speed, and if guys on the outside, it's really hard to, unless you have a really good working car like Kyle Busch, then it was definitely difficult to be able to pass there. You saw Ryan Blaney lead a good portion of the race here at the beginning, but then fell behind on pit stops and then couldn't get back up to the front, so he wasn't obviously able to repeat this week. So yeah, it was definitely really hard to pass, and there was not a whole lot of challenge for the lead or anything like that. So yeah, I mean, it's Gateway this week, of course, but I think one thing we got to bring up is, I mean, of course, Austin Dillon making accusations of intentional wrecking against Austin Cindric. Of course, it maybe doesn't look as bad compared to Chase Elliott or even Bubba Wallace from what they did, but still, the other guy hooking in the right rear, and maybe might be some data that suggests it was intentional and everything, but kind of wonder why all of a sudden now the driver's deciding to hook on the right rear at the end of his straightaway, or even coming out of the straightaway like we saw last week. So yeah, it's definitely if NASCAR determines that's an issue or not. Definitely still is a trend that you don't want to see guys getting intentionally wrecked, getting hooked in the right rear like that. It's definitely something, hopefully you don't see that too much any longer.
Yeah, I mean, for Bald Spot Dylan to throw out accusations when he's wrecked people to win races in his career, most famously the Daytona 500. To me, I looked at that and it looked like he cleared himself across the nose of the two. Maybe the two did turn on him. I don't really think so. I don't see, I mean, Cindric's history of kind of running into people. I think he ran into Kaz Gralla to win his first truck race. That was at Mosport. I don't really remember him getting in anybody really, like trying to run over somebody when he was doing his Xfinity deal. I mean, he did get moved by Daniel Hemrick to lose that second consecutive championship at Phoenix, but he doesn't really, to me, he's not one of those kind of guys that would go and run somebody over. Bubba can run hot, and that could have led to, that's probably part of what led to that circumstance last year at Vegas. And then Elliott, you know, he has a hard-on for Denny Hamlin and decided he was going to hook him in the right rear and got to sit home and watch Corey LaJoie drive that car and finish 21st. I mean, my goodness. They made the comparison to Corey LaJoie's situation to Jimmy Means when he drove the 25 car for Rick Hendrick. They changed it to the 52 car as a Folgers car, and he got wrecked like 10 laps into the race. He had qualified well, but then he got wrecked 10 laps into the race and then never got another major opportunity. Well, Corey LaJoie had the opportunity of a lifetime driving the 9 car, and he was outrun by Carson Osavar, I think, the whole entire weekend in his car, and before the brake failure for that team. And then he looked ordinary. He was just out there. I mean, no offense to Corey LaJoie, but man, I don't know. If you want to say you're an elite driver, you stack pennies, you're going to be stacking pennies, all right, and you're going to be stacking pennies driving for Spire, because they ain't going to be in a Hendrick car. Pretty sure if he brings enough money, he could drive a Stewart-Haas car. It ain't that far off of a Spire car these days. But yeah, I mean, Austin Dillon, fuck him anyways. The guy's 30th in points. I mean, his teammate is freaking 7th in points and is second in the playoff standings with 3 wins in 15 races. And Austin Dillon is 30th in points. I mean, that's pathetic. And he has minus points because of the penalties too in terms of playoff points. He would be 31st, but then Chase Briscoe and the 14 team got an L3 penalty for, I think, illegal alteration to the floor, front part of the floor with the NACA duct on there, and everyone was joking around. It's like, why would you put that on there and then run as bad as they did? It's like it wasn't cheating. They just, for whatever reason, put an illegal part on the car. The car was already dog shit, and then there's like, okay, let's go and make it even, let's put something that's not supposed to be on there on top of it. Klaus Meyer getting sent home for 6 weeks is fine. I love that Mike Bugaravich, he's called a performance director at Stewart-Haas Racing, and if you look at the performance of the 10, 14, and 41, there ain't a whole lot of performing going on there. And now he's a crew chief for Briscoe. Briscoe had a okay race going on and then had a mechanical, he had a race, somebody, I think the brake deal with Gagson, I think a piece went through his radiator. Yeah, that's what it was. One of them brake failures, might have been the host of R1 brake piece went through the radiator, and he was in the garage, ends up with another terrible finish, 34th place finish. He's in 31st in points. He's going to need a miracle to make a second consecutive playoff appearance. That's for any of the Stewart-Haas cars that aren't Kevin Harvick. I go through, see some of these other guys. Yeah, Bubba had a good run going for a good amount of the day and then wrecked late. I mean, Dylan, we talked about. Oh, Richard had a failure later in the race. A lot of these were Chevys. It has nothing to do with who makes the rotors, but these Chevy teams were having problems there. And then you had some of the Toyotas. Trying to see who else was up there really had anything going on. Nothing else. I mean, AJ Allmendinger actually had a decent run considering how bad Kaulig has been this year in Cup. For them to get a couple of cars in the top 20, good deal for them, going to Snoreoma, where, of course, AJ Allmendinger's had plenty of exploits at Snoreoma, most of them not great, so we'll see if he can turn that around. We'll do the trucks because XFinity, we kind of have to do a couple of races, get a kind of mini recap of the Charlotte race as well, along with what happened at Portland. Mentioned Grant Enfinger earlier. Actually, we'll just do the points quickly. The points for the Cup Series right now, overall, Ryan Blaney leads the points by 13 over William Byron, 22 over Kevin Harvick, and 23 over Martin Truex. Ross Chastain, 29 points back in fifth. Then there's Christopher Bell, minus 40. Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin are minus 44. And that's really, those 8 cars are really where the point standings are at for anybody who's trying to go and possibly win that regular season. Kyle Larson is minus 84, tied with Tyler Reddick. Brad Keselowski minus 92, Logano 94. The cutoff spot at the moment is Daniel Suarez in 16th. And Daniel Suarez in 16th, 6 points ahead of Alex Bowman and 15 points ahead of Gibbs, so that's going to be interesting. Daniel Suarez, of course, going to the track where he won his first career race last year at Snoreoma, so could be an opportune time for him to get another victory there and solidify himself in the playoff. Right now, 10 different winners so far this year. It was a lot more parity last year, but see what happens with that. Was going into the Truck Series, as I said, Grant Enfinger benefited from Ty Majeski and what's it called, Zane Smith, because Zane Smith still was able to finish out the race. His truck was destroyed, but they were running for the race lead there late in the deal, and Ty Majeski got loose under Zane Smith in 3 and 4 and cleaned him out, put both Fords into the wall, and the beneficiary was Enfinger for his second win of the season, 9th of his career. Announces that him and his wife are having a son, so congratulations to them. Enfinger led the most laps in this race, but it was basically him and Ty Majeski were the 2 best trucks. Zane Smith was the other one. There wasn't really a whole. It was basically not any more exciting than the Cup race was, but there was some vehicles, you had some issues there, some wrecking. Stephen Malazzi sold his car to get a ride in a Rheum truck for the battery to fail. Might be able to get him on the show for his story because it's very interesting and pretty cool. Go through the results here. Grant Enfinger, the winner, over Christian Eckes, Stuart Friesen, Carson Hocevar, and Chase Purdy. Matt DiBurrito, Ben Rhodes, Nick Sanchez, Jesse Love making his Truck Series debut in place of Corey Heim, who had to miss the race due to an illness. What that illness is, we still don't know, but he did get a waiver. And Jake Garcia getting a top 10 finish there. A lot of the rookies were clustered together between 8th and 15th. Brett Holmes actually had a decent day for once. Daniel Dye almost got a top 10. Jesus. But yeah, I mean, Enfinger gets the win, Josh. The race was basically determined after that wreck between Majeski and Zane Smith. They were running up front. I think it was going to go, one of those two was going to win the race. Enfinger has a habit of being in the right place at the right time. Why he won an ARCA championship years ago. It's kind of what he's done since he's been a GMS, to be fair. He kind of puts himself in position, and it's giving himself a chance to contend for a Truck Series championship this year.
Yeah, definitely. And, I think that ending, between Zane Smith and Ty Majeski, it set up Grant Enfinger to be able to win. But, Enfinger had, led a bunch of laps as well throughout this race. So it wasn't like he didn't have a race-winning car or truck or anything like that. It's just the fact that he was at the right place at the right time to be able to capitalize on that accident. But for Enfinger, of course, possibly making a chance to go for a run here. Now he's also got 2 wins here on the season, so now we have a handful of drivers here that are making their case that they could go for a possible run here. Of course, Corey Heim missing a race gives them an opportunity to gain points on him, which they did, of course. So going forward, how do you win the regular season title for the Truck Series? And of course, you go out and win races, and Grant Enfinger is definitely a guy who's capable of doing that. And then you have other guys in the field. Zane Smith, of course, could have had a chance to set himself above those guys and get a 3rd win here this season. But of course, him and Ty Majeski just going for it at the end. And Ty Majeski was just drove too hard into turn 3 and took out Zane Smith, and hasn't won yet for Ty Majeski, so definitely a missed opportunity there to get a win. But yeah, not a whole lot too much happened. I mean, there's just a ton of cautions in this one. Obviously I had it on, but I mean, I don't know how much I was really paying attention to it. Of course, when the truck race, tends to drag on and on when you feel like maybe it should end relatively quick, but just got a lot of inexperience and young drivers in the field who don't really understand how to give and take and everything, and leads to a lot of stuff happening throughout the race that maybe you won't see in Cup or even Xfinity. But yeah, definitely not too much happened here. But I mean, I will say it, at least there's probably a little bit more passing for the lead up front in this race than there was in Cup, though, so we can give them that.
Yeah, it's about all we can say on that one. They're gonna take a couple weeks off and come back. Their next race will be in just over 2 weeks time at Nashville. So 17 days as of now, which we're doing a count, will be on Friday the 23rd. In terms of their schedule, I think I'm trying to see where they put the truck playoffs, and then yeah. So the last race, so they only have right now. There's only 4 more races in the regular season prior to this. So prior to them starting their playoff, which will be in August at IRP. So they have Nashville Super Speedway. They have 4 different, very unique racetracks to go to for these last 4 races. Nashville Super Speedway, a concrete cookie cutter, Mid-Ohio sports car course, road course, of course. Pocono, which is, is an oval, but it's unique in its own right. And then you have Richmond for the regular season finale. So something to look at there. The points going into Nashville here in a few weeks' time. Corey Heim maintains his points lead, but by 1 over Majeski. Probably Majeski would have taken the points lead if he hadn't wrecked. Enfinger with the victory gets to within 9 points. Zane Smith -19, Ben Rhodes -32, Christian Eckes -36. All of those drivers outside of Ty Majeski, of course, as Josh mentioned, they've all won. After that, there's a huge gap between Eckes and Carson Hocevar, 52 points, and but he has a win, so he's okay. The battle for the last 3 spots in the playoff at the moment. Ty Majeski's going to make it, so that's not a big deal. It's more about the last 2 spots, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, because Crafton is up by 25 points. There's a 25-point gap between Matt Crafton in 8th and Nick Sanchez in 12th. So that's something to look at. D Burrito 7 points ahead of Tanner Gray and 11 ahead of Sanchez on the bump spot. So something. D Benedetto's trying to hold on. Friesen hasn't won this year. Matt Crafton made a crew chief change, and they had issues all through the weekend. Right now, as it stands, I think they have three right now. They have three trucks in the playoff, but two that are more or less solid in Majeski and Rhodes, and Grafton's trying to hold on for dear life there. Going back, well, before we get into Portland, we'll go back and talk about Charlotte briefly. I mean, we live casted it last week because it ran very late in the day or in the evening or whatever. Justin Allgaier using fuel mileage to win the Alsco Uniforms 300 after I don't know how many delays and aborted starts or whatever. Allgaier getting the victory. The race was dominated by him, John Hunter, and Ty Keebler-Gibbs, who won both stages. They were the top three cars most of the day. Gibbs pitted late for tires and fuel, while Allgaier, Nemechek, and Cole Custer didn't. And I think Austin Hill did pit, so he was the best of the guys who did pit. Only 7 cars on the lead lap at the end of the day. Parker Retzlaff getting a 6th place finish, so 6th and 7th for Jordan Anderson Racing, Jeb Burton finishing in 7th, Hocevar finishing 8th, a lap down. So I mean that race was determined on fuel mileage, but those were the three of the best cars there. There wasn't really a whole lot of drama in that race. Sheldon Creed got decent stage points, but then fell back. I think he hit the fence or something. So that was that on Monday. Then they had the logistical nightmare of having to go from Monday night and then on Saturday afternoon race at Portland International Raceway for the Pacific Office Automation 147. That race was somewhat interesting in the sense behind Sheldon Creed because he had the best car, started on pole, did have get in argy-bargy with John Hunter Nemechek. Creed got moved by John Hunter, and then he went and cleaned John Hunter out in retaliation. That opened the door for Justin Allgaier to go and kind of take over the race for a while until Parker Kligerman decided to clean him out in the Festival Chicane. And that was the end of that, which allowed Cole Custer to get around. He won the second stage. Creed won the first stage, but led only twice for 5 laps, but he gets his first win of 2023. Somewhat unexpected. We don't really think of Cole Custer as a road racer by any means. I mean, I think the one time that he had a big time on a road course was when John Hunter ran him into the grass at Mosport, and then he went and tried to kill John Hunter Nemechek on the front straight, WWE style. That was the one time I can remember Cole Custer contending on a road course in the truck series there. Custer over Allgaier, Sam Mayer, Barry, Josh Berry, Austin Hill, your top 5. Myatt Snyder driving the 19. For Gibbs was 6th. Creed, Connor Mozak, Chandler Smith, and John Hunter Nemechek rounded out the top 10. Alex LeBay just outside of the top 10 there for Mario Goslin's team. So Jordan Taylor had a much better car, and he ran better than where he finished in 27th. I think that last restart, somebody must have run him over. That's the only way I can come up with him going from top 5 all day to being 27th. So unfortunate for him and the calling team. But yeah, Custer, the beneficiary of the overtime restart, but they are a decent team. I don't think they're a favorite by any means. There's experience there. They have a good vibe going on there with that 00 crew in a time where Stuart Haas is not looking great. At least to get some good news on that front.
Yeah, definitely for Cole Custer, it's definitely a positive for Stuart Haas Racing there. But I mean, he wasn't really that dominant and was definitely a beneficiary of the last restart. But he also did win the second stage, and definitely should have stayed up there. After that, where he had a bad restart and had to go through the chicane, the penalty chicane, and almost even had to take a penalty there. But NASCAR kind of let it slide since he didn't really have an opportunity to go through that penalty chicane properly, but managed to get back up there on speed, and then was beneficial to the last restart with Allgaier and Sheldon Creed and Parker Kligerman there. So definitely a good win finally for Cole Custer, even though you're right, he's not really a road course guy, but I think he just happens to be good enough, probably dedicating his craft, of course, to being good in the Xfinity Series. Hopefully get a ride in the Cup Series again. But on the flip side, Justin Allgaier, missed opportunity there for him. Of course, he's somebody that's been really good on road courses over the course of his Xfinity career, and definitely could have another opportunity to add a win to the list there for him. But ends up finishing second, kind of sent it in there the last couple of corners that race, but wasn't able to catch him on the front straight to get past Cole Custer, but still finishing in second there. So good result there for the 7. Sheldon Creed, another guy who had some misfortune and actually did lead a lot of laps as well. So, of course, getting spun out by John Hunter, and then he paid him back later in the race. And then they settled it on pit road and had a discussion there. So, that bit was pretty interesting. And then, of course, John Hunter got into it with his teammate and with Sammy Smith there. So, a little bit of drama over in the Xfinity camp for Joe Gibbs Racing. Definitely not what you want to see if you're Joe Gibbs, but you got two guys that are pretty aggressive drivers at the end of the day, so maybe it's to be expected there. Myatt Snyder, somebody said that could be a wild card in this race, end up finishing 6th, so in a Joe Gibbs car, so definitely good finish there for him. Sam Mayer coming all the way from the back, finishing 3rd. That's a good finish for him as well. And he's definitely, not somebody we think of as someone's competent on road courses. That's definitely not expected there. Kligerman, of course, had an opportunity at the end of the day. Could have been a win for him if he made the chicane going into the first set of corners at Portland, but unfortunately, it didn't make it happen. Interesting though how his car going through the S's, before the back straight at Portland, how he was basically on 3 wheels, and really interesting how his car was handling there, and thought maybe that might have been an advantage, but he really wasn't able to translate that into speed to make up against Allgaier before the last set of yellows. Definitely an interesting look there, being somebody that had 3 wheels and the left front way up high, going through the S's there. So, it was a good race. I thought it was pretty entertaining. Another road course race without stage cautions, so definitely a good aspect there. Definitely a great race all the way around. One thing though, Chandler Smith owning Jeb Burton on social media and saying how Jeb Burton was gonna go and beat up Chandler Smith after the race, but then wasn't really able to land any punches or anything, and Chandler Smith put together a good clip if you haven't seen it on Twitter, and just completely, him and his social team just completely owned Jeb Burton there. So it was pretty funny. I mean, whether it's right or wrong, it's pretty funny. So that's what counts these days. So that was pretty interesting there. So gonna have a Xfinity road course race at Sonoma coming up this week, so that should be interesting. 2 road races in a row, so maybe a lot of the guys that were good here potentially could have another successful week of road racing if things go their way next week.
Yeah, and then there's plenty of Cup guys that are going to be in the race as well, so be a tougher field to make for some of the lower level teams as well. We'll definitely get into that, but the points going into Snoreoma, John Hunter Nemechek leads the overall points by 14 over Austin Hill, 44 over Allgaier in 3rd. Cole Custer is 4th, minus 65. and Josh Berry is -91 in 5th. Chandler Smith is in a battle with Sheldon Creed there, 6th and 7th. Sammy Smith, Sam Mayer, and Riley Herbst are all clustered, 11 points between those three. Daniel Hemrick is on the bump spot. For the playoffs, he is 14 points ahead of Bruckshot Jones, who's 12th. Jeb Burton, of course, won at Talladega, so he's in. And we'll see what happens as we move along here in the Xfinity Series. Spanish Grand Prix, Fish Lips won, and that's basically it. There really wasn't a whole lot going on there in that race. It was pretty straightforward for Verstappen. I think at this point it's a question of if he's ever gonna lose this year. The rest of the year, he gave Sergio Perez a couple of opportunities, and now Sergio Perez has handed him back with 2 consecutive races where he's basically dick-stepped himself at Monaco and at Barcelona. Verstappen the winner by 24.09 seconds over Lewis Hamilton. George Russell was third, 32.38 seconds behind. Perez was 3.5 seconds behind Russell. And then Carlos Sainz, who finished fifth, was around 10 seconds behind Sergio Perez. The Aston Martins had a rough weekend. Stroll ahead of Alonso, and now Mercedes is ahead of them in the Constructors' Championship. Both Alpines, Ocon in 8th, Gasly in 10th, sandwiched in between Guan Yu Zhou. Charles Leclerc fell less than a second away from getting a point, and Yuki Tsunoda was the last car on the lead lap. There's everybody finished. Logan Sargent finished last, couple of seconds behind Valtteri Bottas. I really don't know. He won the pole pretty handily, which is kind of what has become a norm for Fish Lips. Then he went out there, got a great start, and it's really I don't think we're there's going to be much of anything to come out of the rest of this season outside. I think the thing to look at is what's going to happen with some of these other teams during for what these teams may bring to the table. That might be interesting, but the championship is over, both the drivers and constructors, at least for the top spot. And it's a case of if Verstappen's just going to continue winning the rest of the season. He's 1 win away from tying Ayrton Senna for wins in a career, which is crazy to think. But when you start when you're 17 years old and you generally have been in good equipment the majority of your career, I think that's going to happen. So, anything else you got on the Spanish Grand Prix, Josh? I know we talked about it. I was on Grid Talk, and and I'll be honest here, I didn't even watch a lap of the race. I woke up and was by the time I turned it on, Lewis was giving thanks to the team and everything. So I'm like, okay, that means something could happen. And they were going to the podium. So that's not the first time I've done that. I've had to host and not watch the race, which is actually better than trying to be a guest and actually talk about it. But
well, yeah, because you're just officiating the roundtable, so you get to ask all the questions. I woke up and I missed the start and saw some of it, so kind of went back and forth between it in the morning. But not really a whole lot. Of course, was kind of curious to see how Lewis would do. At certain points of the race. Of course, ended up finishing second. So, good progress for Mercedes, I guess, right? They've been pretty bad compared to their standards, and getting a second, of course, that might be the closest they get to a win for Lewis this year, but certainly progress there, which is certainly something to be proud of if you're a fan and invested in their efforts. So definitely a good result there. And then I guess, for third, I thought maybe Sergio Perez would have caught George Russell there at the end, but on the different set of tires, but just didn't have enough time to be able to get up there, and definitely wasn't able to make as much progress. And of course, you talk about Sergio kind of giving it away to Verstappen, and well, I mean, as a teammate, you're supposed to challenge your other teammate, but he just hasn't been able to capitalize on being able to do that. And with the way things are, I think even for Perez, the chance of, or at least the remote chance of being able to have a opportunity to win the title probably fading away very quickly if it hasn't already. So that's definitely probably out the door there. But surprisingly, even if you're not going to be the guy, you expect to at least try to make the podium. And so I think you have to be a little bit disappointed if you're a Sergio Perez fan or even a Red Bull fan that the other car didn't make it onto the podium or anything like that. But a little bit surprised, at some of the other results, with this race. Of course, Leclerc, I guess qualified poorly this weekend and everything, and wasn't able to get into the points this week. So that takes a hit, with his chances of getting into the better position in the points. So that's pretty disappointing there. With Alonso, would have thought maybe he would have continued his good streak that he's been on, but was only able to do 7th in his home Grand Prix. But on the other end, pretty good results for Gasly. Of course, maybe one of the worst cars on the grid in terms of pace. And then you have Zhou Guanyu, of course, getting a good run, getting in the points this week. So definitely a good opportunity to score points, but he was able to do that. So yeah, not a whole lot happened in this one, but at the end of the day, Verstappen, I think from here on out, probably win the title, and probably, I don't know if he will win every race the rest of the way, but yeah, I definitely think he'll win most of them for sure.
I think it's not about Ayrton Senna's record. It's about going and passing Alain Prost, and who has 51, and I think Sebastian Vettel has 53, I believe. I don't remember off the top, but that's where 13 races. I mean, there's way more than 13 races left in the season anyways. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. There's 16 races left in the season. And if he can win, I think 13 more of them, which is highly likely, then he's going to get to second or third all time by the end of the year, possibly. Definitely be third all time by early next year. Things continue down this path. One other thing to mention, the McLarens had both qualified really well. Lando Norris ran in the back of Lewis, broke his front wing, and that basically put the end of his day. Piastri was in the top 10, but then didn't really have the pace during the race. Fell back, was the first car a lap down. Hulkenberg was also in the top 10, but fell back and finished 15th. The Haas's are not doing great, but then is that really surprising? The points is 53 point lead for Verstappen. Of course, he's won 5 of the first 7 races. The only other races were Sergio Perez wins, and Verstappen finished second in both of those. It's a close battle, actually, it's 30 points separating Sergio Perez and Lewis Hamilton, second to fourth. Alonso's 18 points behind Sergio Perez. So second in the World Drivers' Championship is very in play. George Russell has a 7-point lead on Carlos Sainz and a 23-point lead on Leclerc. Leclerc is closer to Stroll, which is pretty sad considering how bad Lance Stroll has been this year. Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly round out the top 10. The teams and the constructors, of course, mentioned Red Bull. They are 135 points ahead of Mercedes, who has overtaken Aston Martin for second in the constructors. They're 18 points behind, so Aston Martin's still in the mix for that spot. Ferrari is a distant fourth. They're 52 points out of second and 34 out of third. Alpine is 60 points behind Ferrari, and they're in their own zone, really, because they're 23 points out of McLaren. And then I think the intrigue is from 7th on back. Haas, Alfa Romeo both have 8 points, AlphaTauri with 2, and Williams with their solitary point at Bahrain with Alex Albon. They'll be racing. Their next race, of course, is a Canadian Grand Prix. It'll be in a couple weeks' time, and we'll get into that next week on the GSP. Let's go into the roundup. GSP roundup time. We'll get first into Formula 2 and Formula 3 at Barcelona. Brad Benavides got penalized. That's great. Probably because he sucks. The winners, Frederick Vesti won the sprint race, and then Ollie Bierman won the feature this past weekend. And the sprint race, that's not what I wanted to see. Go over there. So in the sprint race, Vesti, that's not, I just wanted to, there you go. Vesti over Teo Pocher by 1.1 seconds, and Victor Martins rounded out the podium. Iwasa was 8th, Enzo Fittipaldi 10th, Benavides was 15th. Jan Daruvula had issues, they talked about it. He finished 19th, so not a great race for him there. Then in the feature race, Ollie Bierman over Enzo Fittipaldi, Victor Martins, Iwasa comes up to 4th, Vesti finished 5th, Pocher was 7th, Juan Manuel Correa was 11th, Jack Crawford was 13th, Daruvula 14th, and Benavides got penalized. He finished last. So standings, now they'll have about a month off between Barcelona and then racing at Austria. Frederick Vesti is up by 11 points over Teo Pocher. Iwasa is in 3rd, Ollie Bierman 4th, and Dennis Hauger in 5th. Hauger in 5th all the way to Arthur Leclerc in 13th is only separated by 21 points. So a lot of movement can happen in that area. Kush Miney didn't have a great, didn't score any points this weekend. Zane Maloney had a rough weekend. Daruvula had no points. Crawford got none. So not a great weekend for some of those drivers that we focus on here. In Formula 3, the results from the other, and there's another American who got penalized, Hunter Yaney. So Zach O'Sullivan got the sprint race win, and Josep Maria Marti went and won the feature race. So Zach O'Sullivan over Browning and Fornaroli, and then Bortoletto, Paul Aaron, top 5. Get into, let's see, where the American driver, Kalen Frederick, got penalized, Hunter Yaney, another American driver, Gabriel Mini had a rough race there. I'm trying to look for Sebastian Montoya next to last. Not sure what happened to the Indian drivers. I guess people are getting fired for other pay drivers. Marti gets the win over Franco Colapinto, Beganovic, Bortoletto, and Aaron. Montoya recovers, gets 7th. Sebastian Montoya in the feature. Trying to see some of these other names. I don't know. I guess there's been some changes to the grid. Bortoletto scored 19 points total this weekend between both races, and is 24 points out of Marti. He is 31 ahead of Beganovic. Gabriel Mini with a double knot loses ground. It falls back a couple of places. Paul Aaron in 5th. So they'll race at Spielberg in a few weeks' time. So they'll be taking some time off as well. The NHRA New England Nationals mentioned took place. They said due to the inclement weather. Oh, That was part of the weekend's Thunder Valley Nationals. Oh, that sucks. So I guess, what is it? Due to not take place second qualifying. Okay, so the NHRA didn't run. They're gonna go and finish the race at Bristol. So we'll see how that goes, and we'll talk about it next week. And in Rally Italy for the WRC, Thierry Neuville gets the victory over his teammate Esa-Pekka Lappi, 33 seconds. Defending world champion Kalle Rovanperä finishes third. Efren Evans is fourth. And then the Rally 2 car of Andreas Mikkelsen and Skoda finished fifth overall. Rally 2 class filled out the rest of the points. Sebastian Ogier had issues, finished 14th and 19, nearly 20 minutes behind. So that's really it. They'll be racing in Kenya in 3 weeks' time. Yeah, they'll be racing in Kenya, so that'll be a rough, tough battle there. Kalle Rovanperä, with his third place finish, solidifies his points lead, 25 points ahead of Thierry Neuville with his first win of the year. Ott Tanak is third, 2 points ahead of Efren Evans, and Ogier, who has run only 4 rounds this year, is fifth in points. Lappi, with his second place finish, is 3 points behind the 9-time world champion. World Superbikes were at Misano last week, and I'll go and bring those up, see where they're at. World Superbikes, and that's cars. And try to see if we can get bikes. And then World Out of his recovery. Alvaro Bautista won all 3 races there at Misano. Lovely. So that's MotoGP. That's not what I wanted. Oh, because that's Italian. That's the Italian Grand Prix coming up this weekend. We'll go to worldsuperbike.com. Yeah. Okay, so World Superbike, we'll go to the results. Emilia Romagna round. Bautista over Ruben Rinaldi and Rascatliocu in race 1. The Superpole race, Rinaldi and Rascatliocu swap spots, but Bautista wins. And then Axel Bassani gets on the podium in race 2. So that's essentially that. Garrett Gerloff, it looks like, trying to find out if he actually did or what he did in the race itself. Results. Yeah, I'm trying to go through here. Garrett Gerloff finished 13th in race 1. And then in the Superpole race, trying to close that. Superpole, that's not what I wanted. Superpole race, that's what I wanted. What's it called? Garrett Gerloff actually finished 9th in the Superpole race. I think rain played a role in that because he was lapped down in that, but got some points. And then in race 2, Garrett Gerloff finished 8th. So a good weekend for him. It's been a rough start to the year, so I think the weather played a part as well, assisting that because there was issues. It was dry, but they'd had issues with humidity and rain and all during the weekend. So something to look at there. The next race for the World Superbikes will be in a couple weeks' time. They'll be racing at Donington Park at the end of the month for the British World Superbike round. And then, they're going to Imola. They're going to Imola after that. Okay. Okay. Bautista leads by 86 points over Rascatliocu. He's got a 148 point lead on Andrea Locatelli. So, yeah, I think the championship's over. Locatelli, Johnny Ray, and Axel Bassani. A little bit of a battle there, but it's not really that great. Formula E ran at Jakarta for a doubleheader. We'll bring that up. And ABB Formula E World Championship races. So what do you call? So the next race will be the Portland E Prix. So we'll actually get a Formula E race on a reasonable time. That'll be great. So, and then the qualifying the race will be at what 12? Is that night? Wow, they're racing it at night too. Or it'll be 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock. Okay, all right. So that'll be something cool to see here in a few weeks' time. Pascal Wehrlein won the first race in Jakarta over Jake Dennis and Maxi Gunther, who started on pole. Stoffel Van Dorn, John-Eric Verne, the DS Penske teammates 4th and 5th. Mortara, Nick Cassidy set the fastest lap. Antonio Felix da Costa, Robin Freins, and Jake Hughes, the Maserati team, coming out of nowhere after what has been a pretty nightmarish start to the season for them. Then in race 2, Gunther gets the victory after starting on pole over Jake Dennis and Mitch Evans. Jake Dennis had the fastest lap. Sasha Fenitraz, Norman Nato, the Nissan teammates 4th and 5th. Wehrlein, Da Costa, Mortara, Van Dorn, and Buemi round out the top 10. Point standings, with 17 days before the next, of course, round in Portland. Wehrlein retakes the points lead by 1 over Jake Dennis. Nick Cassidy is in 3rd, 6 points behind in 3rd. And then Mitch Evans 4th, Jean-Eric Verne in 5th. Those are really the 5 that are in contention. Then you have Da Costa, Gunther with the amazing result at Jakarta, basically 28 and 20, 46 points in this weekend, and prior to that, I think he had 24 points the whole rest of the season. Sam Bird's been on a bad string, didn't start the second race at Jakarta, tied with Sebastian Buemi. Jake Hughes rounds out the top 10. That'll be cool to see Formula E at another U.S. spot, because they've been at Brooklyn in the Red Hook section of Brooklyn, racing there in New York in recent years. Indy next. So Siegel, okay, I guess Siegel won there. Nolan Siegel got his schedule results. Detroit race 2. So in race 1 at Detroit, Reese Gold got the victory over Jagger Jones and Ernie Francis Jr. Podium there. And then in race 2, Nolan Siegel over Christian Rasmussen and Louis Foster. And Ernie Francis was 7th. Jagger Jones finished last after wrecking. Jamie Chadwick finished 16th in race 2. In race 1, she finished 11th. The standings right now in the Indy next, Christian Rasmussen, 2 points out of Nolan Siegel. Hunter McElroy is 3rd for Andretti Autosport. Danielle Frost, Jacob Abel round out the top 5. 3 of the top 5 were HMD cars. And if you add Louis Foster there, so 2 Andretti cars there. Ernie Francis Jr. comes back this weekend. Past weekend, he's 11th, tied with Inam Ahmed for 10th and 11th in points. It's pretty close, tightly packed there. So it was 15 points all the way up to 5th. So if Ernie Francis can continue building, he might be able to move up there in Indy next. MotoGP and Moto2 will be at Mugello this weekend. MotoGP, the points, of course, we have the point results at Mugello before they go to Sachsenring. Riders Championship after the race. So Pecco Bagnaia is a point ahead of Marco Bezzecchi. Brad Binder is 3rd, 13 points behind. Jorge Martin 14 points behind in 4th. And Johan Zarco rounding out the top 5 there in MotoGP. And then in Moto2, Tony Arbolino, 25 points out of Pedro Acosta. And 38 points out of Alonso Lopez, 39 points out of Philippe Salic in 4th. Trying to go and find Joe Roberts is 18th in points, tied with Darren Binder. And then Sean Dillon Kelly is one of the riders that hasn't scored points yet. We'll see if that can turn around this weekend. And then the last but not least is the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Josh probably come back in here. Hours of Le Mans, mainly for one reason, because the Garage 56 car is a Gen 7 car, and with a souped-up Gen 7 car from Hendrick Motorsports, and they're running times that are faster than the GT AM cars at the moment. But I mean, it's a full pro lineup. You have former Formula One world champion Jenson Button. You have Mike Rockenfeller, who's a great sports car ace over many years, and then one Jim Johnson driving at Le Mans. So that's a cool car. It sounds good. It looks good. It shows that if you had you had certain people working on it instead of Dallara and whatever, they might have had a better car in the first place. But unfortunately, they didn't do that. So we'll go and preview. There's 62 cars. Of course, I mentioned Hendrick Motorsports, the Garage 56 Chevy. They're on Badger tires, and I mentioned the 3 drivers there. Juan Pablo and Sebastian Montoya are on the what do you call reserve list? That sucks. They should have been in the race. All right, so we'll go through the list for 16 cars in the hypercar category. Extra cars coming from the Ganassi Cadillac team, third Porsche from Porsche Penske Motorsports with guys that run in IMSA. Action Express bringing their Cadillac over, and Glickenhaus running a second prototype as well to make up the 16-car grid. The number 2 Cadillac has been running in WEC with Earl Bamba, Alex Lynn, Richard Westbrook. The number 3 will be Sebastian Bourdais, Renger van de Zande, and Scott Dixon. The Floyd Van Wall number 4. They got rid of Jacques Villeneuve and they hired Tristan Vautier, Tom Dillman, and Esteban Guerrieri, the other 2 drivers. The 2 regular WEC Porsches, Dane Cameron, Michael Christensen, Fred Makowicki, number 5, number 6, Kevin Estra, Andre Lauderer, former multi-time winner of this race, and Lawrence Vantor. And then the dominant Toyotas, they've done balance of performance, added some weight to them. Hopefully it'll make it a little more competitive. Number 7 of Mike Conway, Kamui Kobayashi, and Jose Maria Lopez. And then the 8 of Sebastian Buemi, Brendan Hartley, and Ryo Hirakawa. And I figure the win is going to come from one of those 2 cars. The Joda Sport team, the Hertz team, Joda Sport Porsche, the customer car with Antonio Felix da Costa, Will Stevens, and Ye Yafei. That'll be a interesting car to see what they're able to do. The 2 Ferraris, of course, Antonio Fuoco, Miguel Molina, and Nicholas Nielsen. And number 50, 51, Alessandro Perguidi, James Colato, and Antonio Giovinazzi. The 75 Porsche, as I mentioned, Felipe Nasr, Matthew Jaminet, and Nick Tandy. Nick Tandy has won this race as well overall. The 2 Peugeots, Paul di Resta, Mikkel Jensen, and John-Eric Verne in the 93, and then the 94 of Loic Duval, American Gustavo Menezes, and Nico Muller. The Action Express number 311 this week will be Pippo Durrani, Alexander Sims, and Jack Aitken. And then the Glickenhaus cars, Romain Dumas, Olivier Pla, and Ryan Briscoe in the regular 708, the 709, Frank Malieu, Nathaniel Berthon, and Esteban Gutierrez rounding out the prototype, the hypercar field. Very deep field, to say the least. 24 LMP2 cars, all Oricas, Orica Gibson powered cars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in the Pro-Am category within that field. Prema has Juan Manuel Correa in the number 9 car. Bent Viscal, good sim racer. Trying to look through here. Tower Motorsports in the number 13 with John Ferrano, Ricky Taylor, and Rene Rast. Nielsen Racing with American Rodrigo Salas, I don't know. Ben Hanley as well. United Autosport, Philip Hansen, Philippe Albuquerque. In the 22, in the 23, Josh Pearson, Tom Blomqvist, and Oliver Jarvis. Joda's 28. LMP2 is David Heinmeier Hansen, Oliver Rasmussen, and Pietro Fittipaldi. Neil Yanni driving for the Duquesne team. Sean Golale Team WRT, Ferdinand Hamsberg and Robin Freins. Inter-Europol competition number 32 with Mark Kwame, the American, and Jan Magnussen. The Alpine number 35, Andre Negrão, Ollie Caldwell, and Memo Rojas, former Grand Am champion with Hi to My Family at Home. Matthew Vaxivière, Charles Mielcy, and Julien Canal, all French, line up in the 36 for Alpine. Nicolas Lapierre in the number 37. Trying to go through here. Guido in the number 39 with Patrick Pilet. Rui Andrade in the number 41 with Louis Delatraz and Robert Kubica. That'll be a car to look at for the class win. And the Algarve Pro Racing team with George Kurtz, the guy who runs CrowdStrike, James Allen and Colin Brown coming over to race. So that'll be an interesting Pro-Am car. And Simon Pagenaud is actually racing, and I didn't know he was running this race, and he's running the number 47, so we'll see what happens with him. The WEC Prima, or number 63, Dorian Pin, Danny Kvyat, Mirko Bertolotti, and then Job Van Waitert in the number 65 for Olivier Panis' team. Ben Barnicoat in the AF Corsa number 80 with Norman Nato, the Formula E driver. Yet Racing Team Turkey 923 Dries Vantor. Okay. Then in the GT-AMs, there's 21 cars. Last time they're going to have the GT-AM category at this race. The Proton competition 16. Familiar names, Ryan Hardwick, Zachary Robichon, and Jan Halen. They run, of course, here in the U.S. in the IMSA series with Wright Motorsports. AF Corsa, they have cars in LMP2, and they run the Ferrari program, and they're also in the GTM. Don't know, Michael Dinan driving an Aston Martin, Omani team or whatever, and Charlie Eastwood. The Corvette number 33, Nicky Casper, Ben Keating, and Nicholas Verone. Davide Rigon in the 54 AF Corsa car, Marco Sorensen in the GMB 55, Aston, Project One, PJ Hyatt, Gunnar Jeanette, don't know the other guy, but they race here in the U.S., of course, Scott Huffaker and Daniel Serra for Kessel Racing, the Ferrari, Iron Lynx, don't know who any of those guys are, JMW Motorsports, don't know who any of them are. That Kessel Racing team, 3 Japanese guys, never heard of any of them. Dempsey Proton, Christian Reed, Mikkel Pedersen, and Julian Andlauer. The Richard Mill AF Corsa 83, Luis Perez Kompanek, Rovera Lilo Wadu. The Iron Dames 85 Porsche with the ladies, Sarah Bovey, Michelle Gadding, and Rahel Frey. So that's one. Proton competition, Porsche will Harry Tinknell and Don Yout, the American. Northwest AMR, Ian James, Alex Riberas. There'll be one to look at. Chandler Hull, American driver for Walking Horse, and Jeff Siegel, and that'll be a Ferrari. That's the D station car. And the Proton, other Proton, the 911 Proton car with Michael Fassbender, the actor, and Richard Leitz. So those are just those are the names that I know at least. But I mean, this race a few years ago, LMP2 almost won this race because of attrition. The Toyotas have shown that they have great reliability. The Ferraris have been fast, but haven't had, they haven't had luck, or they've had mechanicals. Porsche's not really shown as much pace to start the season. The Ganassi Cadillac has been fast. Basically the best of the IMSA cars, the DPIs, or GTP cars that have crossed over. But it's interesting, a very deep field, one of the deepest fields Le Mans had in a long, long time. Curious to see how this is going to go as the next few years go with some of these other manufacturers, Lamborghini, BMW, coming into the mix in the prototype category. And then the GT category becoming GT3 spec. And if some other manufacturers will end up coming to Le Mans that haven't been there in a while. But, you can't go wrong taking a Toyota. Figure one of them's going to win. They've been on a roll in the WEC and in general at this race as well. I think in the LMP2 class, it's going to be very close. I'd like to see the 23 win, Blomqvist, Jarvis, and Josh Pearson. That would be a good one to see. There's a lot of great drivers, a lot of great cars there. The Alpine team, the 36 car, 41 was a contender last year all season. So some of the cars to look at there. Corvette has one of the best lineups in the GTM. The Proton competition 16 car, I think will be tough to beat though. Other than that, it depends. I mean, you will see what the balance of performance is relative to some of these cars. The Northwest AMR team, I think Ian James could, and Alex Riberos, that team could do something as well. And then it'll be interesting to see what Hendrick and the Garage 56 car are able to do, and if they're able to run all 24 hours, that'll be interesting to see with that. It definitely sounds cool. The 100-year anniversary of the 24 Hours of Le Mans coming up this weekend. Okay, so now we'll get into Cup and Xfinity at Snoreoma, Josh. And first we'll get into the Xfinity. It'll be the DoorDash 250, which will have, what is it? It says 41 cars for 38 spots, so 3 cars are going to go home. Excuse me. Driver changes. Blaine Perkins has been driving that 02 car. Ty Dillon is actually going to be in the Xfinity race in the 4 for JD Motorsports. Daniel Suarez will be driving for SS Greenlight in the 07. Kyle Weatherman in the 08. AJ Allmendinger will be in the 10 for Colleague. Kyle Larson in the 17. Keebler Gibbs in the 19. Connor Mozak, Trans Am driver, trying to move over to NASCAR. He's in the 24. Kyle Sieg is in the number 29 for RSS. So RSS is entering 4 cars, or trying to enter 4 cars this weekend. Leland Honeyman is in the 35 for Emerling Gase. Josh Bilicki is in the 36 for DGM. Joe Graff Jr. in the 38. Dylan Lupton in the 43 for Alpha Prime. Sage Karam in the 44 for Alpha Prime. Brad Perez in the 53 for Emerling Gase. Mason Filippi in the 66 for MBM. Ross Chastain in the 91 for DGM. And Eric Almirillo in the 28 car for RSS Racing. So a lot of Cup guys in this field. I think for the first time they're running the Xfinity Series there, I would venture to say a Cup guy is going to win. But what say you? Who do you see and who do you look at as a favorite to win this deal on Saturday? Somebody, I would say the wild card would be, I guess, the best Xfinity guy, really. Because I don't see how a Cup guy doesn't win this race.
Yeah, you're right. It's hard to see if a Cup guy doesn't win this race, but yeah, he certainly could. It's definitely possible, but however likely, I don't know. It's kind of surprising to see this many Cup level of Cup people in this field right now, of course. But to me, I mean, I'm gonna go with AJ Allmendinger here. It's hard to go against Hendrick and Kyle Larson, but I feel like AJ in the Colleague car will figure out a way to get it done. I feel like a few years ago, go back to 2014, probably had a shot in the 47 to go get that win, but then got taken out by Dale Jr. I think in the closing stages of that one back now almost 8 years ago, so 9 years ago. So he could definitely win. But yeah, I do feel surprised by the amount of Cup guys in this field. But on the other hand, extra practice and then also bring a little bit of attention to the Xfinity Series racing at Sonoma for the first time. So that should be pretty interesting there. Wild card. Wild card, I'm going to go with Sage Karam. I want to see how IndyCar driver, I mean, of course, he's more of a novel guy on the IndyCar side, but nonetheless, I mean, he did race here at one point in the Xfinity or in the IndyCars, so would like to see how he does, in the 44 solid Alpha Prime car. A lot can happen too, of course, during this event. So we could see him at the end of the day, possibly a top 15 run or even better than that. So would like to see how he performs this weekend here at Sonoma.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good pick. They try to put things together. He's run well in this series, especially at the road courses. Famously got hooked by dumb fuck Gregson at Road America last year in a road rage deal, but while he was running in the top 10. So entirely possible. It's a very tight course, nowhere near as flowing, so I think there's going to be a lot of yellows, so that'll be an interesting way in how that affects pit strategy. I'm picking Kyle Larson. I mean, I figure it's either him or Gibbs, or because you got Allmendinger, so I mean, I think one of those three guys is going to win the race. I mean, I don't know what SS Greenlight is bringing to the table with Daniel Suarez. Maybe they have a better piece, but I don't know. I think he would be a sneaky pick there, but I'm going with Larson. And then my wild card, I'm going to go, it's more because of fandom and respect, I'm going to go with Brad Perez. He's not driving for one of the bigger teams, of course, just trying to go and get a top 20, 25 finish. Emerling Gase, that's kind of what they're about. If he can keep his nose clean or keep the car functional, he should be able to do that in one of his limited starts there. So we'll see what happens with that. And then also, of course, qualifying is going to be a thing in itself because you have to beat however many cars to make the show. And you have these cup drivers in these Xfinity teams, so that'll make it a little more difficult to make the race. The Cup Series race, the Toyota Save Mart 350, only 36 for 36. No major dramas there. The driver changes for this week. Corey LaJoie back in the 7. Chase Elliott back in the 9. The 15 will be Andy Lally. The 51 is going to be Todd Gilliland. Zane Smith is actually going to be in the 38 this weekend for one of his limited races. And Balicki is in the 78. Chastain will have Kubota on his Chevy. Cindric has America's tire instead of, I guess, Discount Tire. Brett's Tree for Bald Spot. Mobile One for Kevin Harvick. Valvoline will be on the Kyle Larson car, so that'll be different. King's Lion for Brad Keselowski. Schutler Systems, Corey LaJoie. McLaren Custom Grills for Kyle Busch, one with that scheme at Talladega. Sport Clips for Hamlin. Menards and Moen Faucets for Ryan Blaney. Ford Performance Racing School for Chase Briscoe. Camping World will be on the car for Andy Lally and Rick Ware Racing there. Allmendinger running both races with whatever Gabriel Glass, whatever that is. 5th, 3rd for Chris Buescher, regular sponsor for Martin Truex, Ream for Chris Bell, Dex Imaging again for 21 for Harrison Burton, Auto Trader for Joey Logano, DoorDash for Bubba, the Raptor Tough for William Byron, Circle for Justin Haley, Loves Travel stops back on the car after FR8 was on last week for McDowell. Well Care for Zane Smith. Autodesk for Ryan Preece. Usual no sponsors for Gagson and Eric Jones. The Beast Unleashed will be back on the 45 for Tyler Reddick. O. Richard with Kroger and Cottonelle. Ally Pride, so a lot of people are going to get really mad about that. Todd Gilliland will be in the Serial 1 e-bikes 51. He ran that sponsorship this past weekend at Gateway in the 38. Keebler Gibbs, regular sponsor. No sponsor listed for the 77 or 78. And Freeway Insurance for Trackhouse Racing and the defending race winner, Daniel Suarez. Okay, so This one, I mean, there hasn't been as much parity in the Cup Series. You mentioned that earlier, Josh, but the road courses do open up. There's windows for certain drivers. Just going back towards earlier this season, going to when they ran at COTA, the only other road course they've run so far this year. Tyler Reddick ended up getting that victory. It was Tyler Reddick, yeah. So that was a interesting deal there. William Byron qualified on pole. That William Byron we've seen so far this year has been really fast. William Byron and Tyler Reddick, they were the two fastest cars basically the whole day. Cindric was up there. Jordan Taylor qualified well and then got used up. Daniel Suarez, Bowman, AJ Allmendinger, Eric Jones, Kyle Busch, and Noah Gragson were the top 10 starters for the race at COTA. Trying to go and see where, that's Group B. Briscoe's 10th. Yeah. Okay. And then the results of the race itself. Oh, yeah, Jensen Button was in the race too. Forgot about that. Yeah. Keebler Gibbs finished up in the top 10 along with Todd Gilliland. Corey LaJoie actually had a decent run. So I mean, it was an interesting race at COTA in terms of, I mean, the battle was really between William Byron and Tyler Reddick. They made the 45 team made a mistake pitting, but somehow or another recovered because of sheer pace. We go and use that, and some of the guys that were over there to go and make picks for this weekend's race. I'm going to pick Gumby to win at Sonoma, the known road racer. He hasn't won since winning the Daytona 500. It's an opportunity race for him. I mean, there's going to be a lot of opportunity races here coming up in these next few weeks, of course, because of the amount of road courses that are going to be on the schedule. You'll take a week off, then you're going to have Chicago Street Course, you're going to have Indy Road Course, Watkins Glen. So 4 road courses coming up here in this next couple of months. And those are opportunity races. I was debating with AJ Allmendinger, but I'm going to go with Gumby Cindric as my pick to win. My wild card pick is, well, it has to be somebody outside of the top 16 anyway. I'm going to go with Keebler. He's a good road racer. He seems to find his way up front in these races. He's going to get the extra time, of course, in the Xfinity car. And, his first time running Sonoma in any car, but I don't think he ran the West Series there or whatever. But I think they get good cars there, Gibbs. He seems to find his way up front in road courses. So those are my choices. How about you, Josh? What are you thinking for the Cup Series at Sonoma?
I'm going to go with Tyler Reddick here, based on what we saw back at COTA and what Tyler Reddick has been able to do on the road courses this past, 2022, 2023 seasons. I'm going to go with Reddick here. I think they've got a really strong chance to win this race. It's a little bit more technical. Sonoma is a little bit more technical, but it's another, it's just as technical, if not more, than COTA. So I think it definitely fits into Tyler Reddick's skill set here. For my wild card, I will go with Andy Lally in the number 15. He's always been a solid road racer throughout his career, and I mean, of course, he is a road racer, not just a solid one. So
Yeah.
He's been solid in his appearances, I think, in Cup. So the 15, of course, they're it's a little bit different, especially with a road guy behind the wheels. So I think they definitely can be competitive. I felt like they did a good job with Jensen Button back in the spring at COTA. So definitely there's a chance there for him, to do something, get a top 15 or top 20 run in that car. And we've definitely seen them be competitive somewhat on a fairly basis, relative to what they've been in the past. So definitely think they have a shot here to get a good finish here this weekend.
Yep. So we'll see what happens with that. I mean, Andy Lally, solid pick. They've been better since with this new car. Was it Joey Hand drove for them last year and had some good results running all them road courses for Rick Ware. So Andy Lally has sponsorship from Camping World and Marcus Lemonis for those 5 races. So it's probably the best deal he's had to drive one of these NASCAR races. So we'll see what happens with him and how he does here in the next few with the 5 races he's going to get in that 15 car. All right, so lead into your turn now, Josh. Let us know what's going on in the world of iRacing and sim racing and where other gaming going on. What's going on with that, and where are you racing here this coming week?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we talked about paybacks the last couple of weeks here, and I actually got paid back, I think, this past weekend here on iRacing, or past week. I was racing GR86 series at Tsukuba Circuit on iRacing, and I think, well, I can't say for sure if it's a payback, but I definitely got right rear hooked at this track by a lapped car. I was trying to pass him on the outside, and I kind of doored him coming off the a hairpin corner, and then just immediately, well, not a right rear hook, but a left rear hook. So I still got, spun out intentionally. And the reason why I'm saying I'm not sure if it's intentional or a payback or not is because I think earlier in the race, going into the first turn, I may have overdrove it and braked pretty late, or the guy braked hard in front of me and I wasn't expecting that, and just completely ran over this guy. So I didn't save the replay, so I can't say for sure it was a payback, but like I didn't realize it at first because I thought like I just got hooked, like nothing, and then I looked at the replay and was like, wow, that was, just looking at the steering wheel input, just guy just turned completely to the right, and I was beside him and just hooked me. So never had that happen before in iRacing, but yeah, it was definitely an experience there for sure. And everything, but I still think managed to come back and finish solidly, I think, that race, or did I quit? I can't remember, but it was definitely an experience there. Then later on, racing the Indy cars at Auto Club, I was in the lead and got just flat out ran over by somebody. Like, I guess he had a run coming off of turn 2, and just didn't. And he was behind me, and I was in the bottom lane, and just I guess didn't let off, or he was trying to cross over and go onto the outside, but just completely jacked me up in the rear and spun me out there and everything. And then this guy actually ended up like spinning out into the outside wall. So after making that contact, so just immediately ended himself there and keyed the radio actually. And I was like Tony Stewart that one year he was pissed off at Joey Logano and had that interaction with Steve Burns. So immediately like that. So I should have streamed that one, especially since I think it started on pole, but I was just running on my own right there, and just never experienced just like getting flat out taken out like that in an Indy car. Just not something I've normally mean that you might get like going to the corner, like you get knocked out of the way, or like you cut in front of somebody and they spin you out just running the back. But I've just coming off of a turn onto a straightaway in the Indy car, like just like flat out ran over. I've never had that happen before, and everything. But I only spun out. I didn't hit anything, so I continued on. But then later in that race, anticipated the restart a little early and ran in the back of somebody. So, and ended up taking myself out there. So ended up not finishing that one. But then later on, in another attempt, had the lead going into the final lap, and then on the last, coming back to the front stretch, it was 3 wide for the finish, and ended up finishing in third by .002. So that was pretty interesting. And the guy, I think I ended up winning, had a draft behind me, and then went onto the apron, and I guess I forgot to take the apron coming to the finish line there. and everything. I was worried about the guy beside me getting enough of a run to finish ahead of me, which he did, but he didn't win the race. The guy just went and took advantage of the apron. So that was pretty interesting there. And then had another one where I was in the lead with 2 to go and just did not have enough tire and ended up spinning out on my own, getting loose off of turn 2 and spinning out. So ended up there. But it was a lot of good racing there at Auto Club on the IndyCar. Always one of my favorite tracks to run on the IndyCar. And then also did a little bit of racing in the BMW GT4 car in Spa, and had a couple of good passes there where I ran. I was, I think, running for like 7th place and 8th place, and managed to send it in there. In one of I have to look at the layout, but I managed to, on a heavy braking zone at Spa, managed to send it in there in one of the corners and pass the guy. And then the guy keyed the radio and said, "Hey, good pass." And I was like, "Yeah." Just had to lick a stamp and send it. And then the next lap, after the corner after Urouge and Radion, I had a good run down that straight and just sent it in there and got 7th away from this one guy. So it's definitely a lot of good moves there as well. So like Spa, like running the GT4 series, they're running with the BMW car. It's got good pace and good handling and everything. So yeah, that's what I did last week on iRacing, and I'll pull up the schedule for this week on the service. But they think this week might be week 13. I have to look at it, but which is between server updates, so they probably just released an update this week. So I have to look at that. So season 3 is just around the corner. Downtime scheduled for June 6th at 0800, so 8 a.m. EDE, 12 UTC. So that's when the next season update will drop. And yeah, so it's week 13. So this week is like that fun week when nothing counts and everything. So should be fun. Should be interesting. Let's see here, NASCAR. I think iRacing Class B and C at Sonoma, which should be interesting. You've got, let's see, up next week, the week 13 series this week. Road, global. I think all of it's just road racing stuff. So 13th week Mazda Cup, 13th week Dirt Car Challenge, 13th week GT3 Ferrari GT3 Challenge. Let's see, Street Stock week 13 as well. So it's gonna be interesting. Let's see, 13th week Figure 8 series with the Gen 4 car at Irwindale. That should be fun. Ridiculousness. So let's see here. You've got the Gen 4, the Truck Series truck, the 87 cars. That should be interesting one there. When 87 cars probably will win that one, but should be interesting navigating with any of those cars on that track. And then you got the twisted, tube frame twister series. You've got the street stock car going on all the road courses. So Laguna Seca, Long Beach, VIR, Lime Rock Park, Rudskogen Motor Center. So should be interesting running a street stock car on that layout. So a bit of the fun week where you can kind of just do anything you want on iRacing and not have it count. Of course, it's hooking in the left or right rear, so should be a fun week on there before the next update drops to start season 3 for the summer this upcoming or next week, I guess. So that's what I'll be doing probably. I think F1 23 is coming out soon, so might download that one once it comes out. either on PC or on PlayStation, so look out for that when it comes. And hopefully it's a little bit more of a simulation. Seen some videos that seems like it's more of a simulation than the previous ones, which were slightly more arcadey. So should be interesting now that they've had a season now with the physics and the current F1 formula. If they're able to accurately replicate the F1 cars from this year, and fun, and should be fun being able to play the game and doing the story mode, career mode, and online lobbies and all that stuff. So that should be fun. But yeah, that's all for this week. Sim racing, as always, should be fun. And of course, when I stream, you can stream on Twitch TV / or watch the stream on Twitch TV / usailor2 and go and watch that. And I'll be sure to drop the link when that's live and everything. So, of course, my personal page where you can see my streams when I'll drop the notice, Twitch or Twitter.com / JP Huffine at JP Huffine on Twitter. So go on there and look at what I have to say, and what I have to say about racing and sim racing, football, which is slowly turning the corner towards that, and all the other things I'm interested in. So go on there, and then of course our YouTube channel, YouTube, Group Strip Podcast. Go on there, subscribe to our page, like our videos. Of course, watch or listen in the background, do whatever you want to do. It's up there. So go in there and support the channel, support the podcast that way. So as always, glad to be able to discuss for another week, and hopefully next week we'll be able to talk about Sonoma. Hopefully it's not something that puts us to sleep and we actually get excited by it. So hopefully it ends up being a good week of racing this upcoming week.
One can hope, but from recent history at Snoreoma, I don't really have high hopes for it, and especially with this car. The one good thing I will say is, what you mentioned also, is because of the new rule with the road courses where they don't have stage breaks. I think it might allow some strategy and bring it back to the old school road racing that we had in that way, at least strategy wise. As always, it wouldn't do the show without you, brother. We always have a great time here. We're gonna have a special guest next week. Certain young guy is going to be on next week. If you've seen the background that I have when I don't have the this faded out whatever background, you could get a clue as well as to who it might be, because that particular person has driven all three of the vehicles. So we'll be talking to special guests next week, coming off of the 24 Hours of Le Mans, NASCAR, of course, at Snoreoma, Cup and XFinity will be there. And then we'll also have a roundup with the 24 Hours of Le Mans, MotoGP, Moto2. Supercars will be back in Indy next. We'll preview the Canadian Grand Prix and IndyCar at Road America. And same deal, of course, Josh's Sim segment closed the deal, so it'll be a different show next week compared to the usual. You can find us, you can find Twitter, you can find us at GripStripPod on Twitter, and YouTube page is the GripStrip Podcast YouTube page, where Josh posts the video feeds for our show. You can find our show on Podbean, where it's our host site, philipgmatthew.com. Basically, as you can find the GripStrip Podcast. So we will be back next week for episode 173 of the GripStrip Podcast. And for that, for Josh, I'm Phil. Take care, God bless, and goodbye.